And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire you whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Welcome to Guerilla Roundup for day 2 of the third test from Adelaide. I'm very pleased today to be joined once again by William Munt, who's in the Guerilla studio,
Hello.
surrounded by
Yes.
technology. Welcome, William.
Thank you very much.
So if I can start you off with just a very brief summary of how the score went today, and then we'll go into a little more depth.
Yeah, sure. So Australia started today on 326 for 8 with Mitchell Starc and Nathan Lyon resuming not out. Australia actually started today quite brightly. England bowled quite poorly, in all honesty, too short and wide. And then they after Mitchell Starc, had reached back-to-back 50s. England eventually cleaned up the innings. So Starc was bowled by Archer for 54, and then Archer trapped Lyon LBW for 9. So Archer ended up taking 5 for 53, and that meant that Australia were bowled out for 371, which on the balance felt like a decent first innings score, but I suppose nothing that England would have been too afraid of, considering it seemed a relatively good pitch for batting. However, at the close of play on day 2, England had 213 for 8. Once again, their start wasn't the worst. They reached 37 before the loss of their first wicket when Crawley was caught behind by Alex Carey off of Pat Cummins. But from that point on, it was another English collapse, which we've seen, unfortunately, all too often on this tour. Ollie Pope, probably the worst shot that an England batter played today and being dismissed, flicked one from Nathan Lyon to Josh Inglis at mid-wicket. Duckett was then bowled by a ripper from Lyon for 29. And then wickets kind of fell throughout the rest of the day. Root was caught behind by Carey for 19. Brooke was quite measured, actually, and shared a 58-run partnership with Stokes. But Brooke fell, and then Smith fell for 22 as well, amidst some kind of more Snicko controversy, which I'm sure we might get into. And then Jacks and Boland fell soon after. And ultimately, Archer is on 30 not out and Stokes on 45 not out. So England have a bit of hope going into tomorrow, but it's still quite slim as they only have 2 wickets left and trail by 158. So that's the state of play.
Thank you. Nicely done, if I may say so.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the start of the day. There was very much a hope for England that they could wrap it up really quickly, and
Yes.
it took a little while and a certain amount of friction on the field. If you'd like to describe how we got to that.
Yes. So initially, like I said, England didn't bowl particularly well at the start. They bowled too short and wide, with both Cast and Archer actually struggling early on, and Starc off to a bit of a flyer, really. I think he started the day on 33 not out maybe and kind of flew to his 50. And then when Archer came on for his second or third over of the day, his first delivery was cut away for 4 by Mitchell Starc, and he seemed to be gesticulating quite angrily towards Ben Stokes. I think it seemed as in maybe some frustration at the field placings. And the next ball, he actually cleaned Starc up with a nice delivery that nipped back from around the wicket and hit leg stump. And then the TV cameras, when they panned to England's celebration, they showed that Stokes and Archer were involved in a bit of a confrontation, really. And then I think later on it was shown that I think Stokes was shown to be lit for it, to be saying something along the lines of, "I told you to bowl at the stumps, and when you did, you actually got them out." So I think there was a bit of frustration from Stokes in how England were bowling. And then Archer, I think, was frustrated by maybe the field placings, but ultimately, I suppose Stokes probably proved right in when they did bowl at the stumps, they got the wickets.
Yeah, well, it's a bit telling in terms of this whole series, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely so.
So yeah, Australia added what 40 something this morning, which
Yeah.
wasn't a great start. With the England innings, you mentioned the dismissals of Crawley, Duckett, Pope, and Root. One of the interesting things with them, the first 4 wickets to fall, England was 71 for 4, 2 to Cummings, 2 to Lyon, neither of whom had played in the last test, and
Yeah.
effectively Lyon wasn't a factor in the first test either.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to see how they were the ones who were carrying the load at the beginning there. Even though Stark had been bowling very well and very fast, he didn't
Yeah.
actually end up with a wicket all day. So from my point of view, I felt like, yes, England are really up against the top level
Yeah.
attack now.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely so. I think we saw that actually just kind of in terms of like the accuracy and kind of how relentless they are. Because I think, and often I think it's supposed to telling that when Australia had more of their kind of first choice lineup back with Cummins and Lyon, we've seen that kind of more of the wickets actually were good balls rather than England kind of gifting their wickets away. So I think
Yes.
obviously England have struggled in the first two tests. Obviously Stark has bowled well, but also they've given wickets away often to Doggett and to Boland. And obviously Boland has bowled well at times and Doggett, but they've given away a few more of their wickets. Whereas today it felt that most of the players actually were got out by the bowling. And I think that it's probably obviously partly because of the better Australian or Australia's best bowlers coming back. So I think thinking about Crawley, got good delivery from Cummins. Said earlier, Pope's shot was very poor, but
Yeah,
Duckett
that was a shocker, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. I think, and even often we kind of talk about the kind of the baseball that England play and their kind of methodology. I think, regardless, it's just an awful shot. I think he's trying to take a ball from, I suppose, probably the line was actually outside off stump. He's tried to really flick it, and I think he's tried to play it too square, and then he's ended up just hitting it straight to Inglis. So that was an awful shot. But then again, Duckett, the ball that he got from Lyon, that probably would have got most players
It
out.
was a beautiful
Turned quite
delivery. It was
nicely.
an absolute pearl. It was interesting that Lyon was brought on something like the ninth or 10th over, really early on from Cummins.
Yeah,
And
I think so. Yeah,
stroke of brilliance in terms of the captaincy when it works.
yeah.
If it hadn't worked, everybody would say, well, it was worth a try.
Yes, well, I think so. And I think obviously we've seen with Will Jacks that there was a bit of turn in the surface, and England had got off to a decent start. I mean, Duck in particular was looking quite nice. He played quite well, and Crawley was looking quite solid actually. Right, even though he didn't actually find the boundary in his 19 balls, and I suppose he was in for the first 10 overs or so. But he was actually they were looking quite solid. So yeah, I think it is one of those where ultimately it's worked. So Cummins will get praise, but I think you would also say that they wouldn't have lost anything if it didn't work.
No,
And
I think to bring a spinner on to Duckett is a really good move because
yeah,
he likes the pace coming onto his bat, doesn't he?
I think
And
so, definitely, yeah. And I think also that Duckett will often try his sweeps and reverse sweeps. And with someone like Nathan Lyon, I reckon he'll feel like he's in the game if he's trying those shots off of him, which obviously he didn't get around to doing that today. But yeah, I think Duckett does kind of like that pace in the ball. And obviously it's one of those where his strength playing against spin is often the sweeps and the reverse sweeps. But obviously his strength can often become his weakness if he chooses the wrong balls or if the ball is starting to turn a bit as well.
yeah, one thing we should talk about probably at this stage is the fact that notwithstanding the score of 213 for eight, I don't think you could do anything other than describe this wicket as very placid, could you?
No, I think I think it's kind of one of those things that the wicket is quite placid. And I think Australia have just bowled better than England. Really, I think Australia have been very, very good. I think it's things like they've just been relentless. Really, I think there's not been that many bad balls. And I mean, like we said, most of the England players you feel like they have been got out, and I suppose it's not really necessarily been through magic balls. I mean, they've been good balls,
Mm.
but I think it's just been that kind of relentlessness. And then when they've got that ball to do a bit, they've just been too good for England. Really, I think that's kind of all it is. Like the ball's not, I suppose, hooping or seaming around the corners. It's just kind of been good, relentless bowling, and then the ball has done a bit. And when it's done a bit, it's got the England batters out.
Yes, yeah. I mean that Cummins ball to Root was just a lovely ball. It was on what fourth
Yeah,
stump line, I suppose, and
yeah.
just did that tiny bit, and he just nicked off to Carey, and it could have happened to anybody. It wasn't a wild shot or anything like that. Um,
No, I think yeah, you're right. I think that one and the Brook one as well from Green that he kind of
yes,
nicked through to Carey as well. They've just it's almost like it's just done enough. It's kind of nipped way ever so slightly and just kind of taking the outside edge. But yeah, I think if you're being hyper critical, the Root one he ended up playing on about fourth or fifth stump line, but I think
yes,
it did enough to kind of justify that. And then the Brook one I do think was just a very good delivery from Green. I think
yeah,
it yeah, he kind of played that. Yeah, I think both of them really they couldn't have done much else. So I think yeah, like we said, that Australia have just kind of bowled better deliveries than England. Really, I think. So I'm
yeah.
trying to think. I even said kind of early on that I didn't remember Australia playing and missing as much as England did, and I think
No,
part of that style, I think Duckett kind of missed a few cuts. I mean, he was kind of wafting, but I do think that Australia got a bit more out of the pitch than England did.
Well, I
But
think
it's
they were
still, like you
prepared to
said,
gamble too with pitching it
yeah,
up, particularly Stark.
yes,
Stark doesn't mind getting hit for four. It
yeah,
it means that he's got the batsman taking risks, and yeah, occasionally he may overpitch, but as I say, he didn't take any wickets, but he bowled beautifully and he bowled
yeah.
fast. He was, right through all his spells, he was in the mid 140s, which was really impressive in heat that got to 41 degrees today.
I think so, and I think he always looks like taking wickets. I know obviously part of that again is how England play, but there's been times when I've been watching England in the series, and you're like, "Where's the wicket coming from?" It feels like you're hoping for someone to. I mean, ultimately, it's the same yesterday. You're hoping for Khawaja to slog sweep one straight to the field on the boundary, like he did. But there's been a lot of hope, I feel, for England in terms of hoping for wickets. But yeah,
Mm.
Stark always looks dangerous. I think, yeah, you always feel that he has that magic ball in him, but also that he has been quite consistent, and ultimately he might be able to swing one into the right hand and pin them on the pads, or I suppose to duck it. He beat Duckett quite a few times outside of stump, and he's often at the moment, I suppose, kind of he's just there or thereabouts. So you often feel that one could have the England batter's name on it, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll come back. Well, Harry Brook played quite well for his 45, I
Yeah,
thought. And he actually showed that he has reined himself in a bit. I didn't see
yeah,
any madness in his approach today, which always made me feel unsettled, both in Perth and in Brisbane. There were
yeah,
just crazy things going on. So
yeah,
that seems to have calmed down, thank goodness.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and then we'll come back to Ben Stokes later. But James Smith was interesting.
yeah,
He had two incidents involving technology, which
yeah.
were of great interest. So you might like to talk us through both of them.
Yeah, sure. So the first one was a Pat Cummins bouncer that it kind of initially looked as if he might have gloved it through to Khawaja at slip. And I suppose ultimately, kind of the long and short of it was it didn't look as if it had actually carried to Khawaja at slip.
Yeah.
But there was often quite a bit of debate with the Australian fielders and the third umpires about whether or not they actually had been gloving it, because the umpires ultimately, in the end, turned away the appeal and the review because they deemed that James Smith hadn't gloved the ball, and they actually deemed they'd gone straight onto his helmet. And again, it was kind of where the Snicko kind of issues have been, like the alignment of the noise and the pictures, because from some angles it did look as if he had got glove onto it. And like we said, again, it all proved to be academic because the ball just bounced short to Khawaja. But Smith got away with that one in terms of the fact that the umpires didn't deem that it had actually caught his glove. But then next time around,
Well,
when he was
before you
actually
leave
given
that
out,
though, I think it's fair to say that even if it had been deemed that he'd hit it, there was general
yeah,
agreement that the ball hadn't actually carried to Khawaja and
yes,
he'd grasped it. So
rightly
um,
so, yes, yeah,
So in fact, the right result occurred if for
yes,
the wrong
definitely, yeah.
reasons.
Yes, I would agree with that. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, just yeah, to carry on, like you said, like the correct decision was made, but whether or not it was done in the correct way, I guess, is where the
Yeah.
debate was there. But then next up, kind of a couple of overs later, he was so Pat Cummins bowled a kind of a delivery to Smith. I suppose it wasn't overly short, but he's tried to pull it, and it's kind of gone through to Carey behind the stumps. And so it was quite interesting the fact that the umpire, so standing umpire Nitin Menon, didn't actually give Smith out in the traditional way, but he walked over to the square leg umpire Asan Raza, initially kind of looking to see if the ball carried. And so I suppose that kind of it almost felt as if obviously he thought it was out, but he was
Yes.
checking. Also, he thought that Smith had nicked it, but he was checking if it had carried. But I didn't see at any stage him actually put the finger up to give him out, even though obviously by the fact that he's gone over to check if it's carried, that's showing that he thinks Smith has nicked it. So then actually the umpires went for an umpire review because they were looking for whether it had carried. Which again it kind of left a bit of confusion because Smith was kind of standing there ready to review. He kind of had his arm in the review position, but the umpires reviewed it because I wanted to see if it had carried. And then again, there was a bit of confusion in terms of there was quite a big spike, but again, it didn't marry up with when the ball was next to the bat.
Yep.
And I guess it's kind of one of those where Smith walked off looking quite frustrated. Stokes kind of hung his head often, like again in frustration. And it's one of those where I think either way, I wouldn't be surprised if he had nicked it because there was quite a big
Yeah.
spike.
It
And again, it was
looked
like
like he probably had, but the
yeah,
video evidence didn't show the ball right adjacent to the bat, and that's partly
yeah,
because of the low frame rate. There wasn't enough frames there to show it actually
yeah.
passing the bat at that moment.
Yeah, because it's like the Carey one. I think like he couldn't have hit his pad. The bat wasn't near the floor. So I think ultimately, yeah, there probably was a bit of bat on it, but it's just one of those like, is
Yeah,
there enough evidence, or like, is the evidence there that fits it? And I mean, ultimately, it's not, because you've got a spike when the ball was like almost nearer to Carey, I suppose, than it is to Smith.
yeah,
And then, even though obviously the spike looks like he probably has nicked it, so ultimately, I mean, maybe it ultimately is the right decision, but it's just the process, and obviously it just doesn't look good. And then also, I suppose it comes into the fact that most of these decisions ultimately have benefited Australia, and obviously, like,
yeah.
I don't believe that there's anything kind of suspicious about that, but
No.
obviously the fact that most of them have benefited Australia, you can see how people might start questioning with it being Fox choosing the Snicko over Ultra Edge. It's all kind of quite messy at the moment, I'd say.
I think there it is, and I think there is broad agreement that at the moment the ICC delegates the job of technology to
Yeah,
the host broadcaster, who then have to pay for it.
yeah,
So Fox presumably are not paying any more than they absolutely have to have that
yes,
technology in place,
yeah,
and I would expect within the next 6 months we'll see a situation where that changes, and there is
yeah,
absolute clarity in terms of what technology must be used in all test matches,
yeah,
and hopefully the BCCA either pays for it out of the TV rights, or
yeah.
there is a clear setting of the costings on that, because I think it's crazy that depending on where you happen to be playing, you've got different standards that are being applied.
Definitely. And I think there's even things like the television umpires. They obviously like they have to interact with it, and they might be used to Ultra Edge or used to Snicko,
Yeah,
and it's just kind of changes how they interact with it. And I think actually that Michael Atherton mentioned that he's spoken to one of the referees. I think it was Magadele, so the match referee, and he'd voiced concerns about Snicko before the series. And it's one of those frustrating things where clearly people knew it might be an issue, and it's one of those that you're waiting for something to happen to then resolve it, which I mean is ultimately frustrating for England. And obviously, I don't think in any kind of stretch of the imagination England should blame that for the situation they're in. I think
yeah,
that's still self-inflicted, but it's just very frustrating that I suppose key decisions ultimately have kind of hinged on the technology. And I suppose obviously I've heard like me people saying about like the issues not with the umpires, it's with the technology. And I'm not even sure the issues with the technology. I think it's kind of how it's being used. And like you say, like the frame rates. Because I mean, I
yeah,
suppose ultimately if it's used correctly and we're kind of all everything's falling into place, you probably could line up the frames, but they don't have that frame rate to be able to do so. And I think
yeah,
we do need a standardized version just to kind of make it's fair. It's like
yeah,
I suppose there's so many different things that we keep the same in cricket. It's like I suppose you wouldn't play with, I don't know, a black sight screen in one country and a white sight screen in another. So it's just to keep it uniform and standardized
yeah,
makes it kind of easier for the players, the umpires to get on board with, and also reduces, I suppose, unfair advantages for anyone.
yeah. I agree entirely. So Smith was out for 22, and
Yeah,
to be honest, I mean, he hit the previous ball for a boundary off start, but
yeah.
it was a shit shot that he got out to.
Yes, I
Uh,
think. Yeah, I would like to just say that I think Smith. It wasn't a surprise he got out. It was he was kind of playing a shotter ball, and he was always going to get out at some point.
yeah,
So I think almost we shouldn't let the nature of the dismissal deflect that. Yeah, once again he looked quite nervy,
yeah,
unsettled, and I mean Australia. I mean it's one of those where he just made it so easy for Australia. They knew that even if he got a few away with the pull shot, if they bang it in, he's going to play it. And obviously, he's not going to keep on finding the boundary. And ultimately, it proves that he didn't keep finding the boundary. And it looks like he nicked one.
yeah. And then we had Will Jacks getting out to Boland. Boland, who bowled 12 overs and six of them were maidens.
Yeah.
Um, uh, this was down to Carey again, in my view.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about
I,
that?
I fully agree. I think it's just one of those things that I think as soon as the keeper comes up, it kind of puts you a little off kind of guard as a batter because you're so conscious about, I think obviously staying in your crease, but I kind of even find from maybe experience that when a keeper's up, I find it so much harder to get onto the front foot because you're kind of scared about committing. And I think it puts you in two minds and almost like you're more kind of leaning towards playing on the back foot. And obviously we actually saw that with Bryden Cast, who was trapped in the crease and was bowled going back to a ball he should have got forward to. And then again, like, so I think there's a kind of the mindset thing with Carey. And obviously, like, you're not as likely to use your feet, which obviously batters like to do to Boland to kind of negate the bit of nibble that he'll get. But even I think the catch was very impressive. I think, obviously, when someone inside edges it into their pad, you have so little time to react. So I think Carey kind of deserves credit for that twofold in terms of the fact that I suppose Jax doesn't really commit onto the front foot
Yep.
fully as he might do because Carey's up to the stumps. But then also, if Carey was back, no one catches that, and it's a very good diving catch forward. So I think Carey's been unbelievable so far in this series. I think everyone does, and he's kind of showing his true worth both with the bat, as obviously we've
Yeah.
seen this 100, but also with the gloves.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Then we had Cast bowled by Boland, Cast
Yeah,
for a duck, and
yeah,
it was pretty ordinary. He shouldn't have been playing back to him. It just asked for
no,
trouble. But Australia, England that stage were 168 for 8. And they've managed to get it to 213 for 8 by stumps. The bowling was okay. There was nothing being given
yeah,
away. Archer's 30 off 48, which, he's now the second highest batting average for England
yeah.
in
Says it
this
all.
series. He's got an average of 39 at the moment. Um, and that was good stuff. And Stokes, who's now on 45 from 151 deliveries.
Yeah,
He's just hit 3 4s, strike rate of 29.8.
yeah,
It's stoic stuff, and
yeah.
it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yep, I think so, really, and I think he's really leading by example. So I think actually initially in I suppose the kind of the Bazball era, he actually kind of seems to take it on himself to go really aggressive. I think he was like he's charging Bumrah and everything like that because I think he felt like if he wanted other people to play this way, he needed to play that way. As in, like I need to walk the
Yeah,
walk almost. But I think now he's kind of taken it on his shoulders to show that no, I want you to dig in, and I'm prepared to do it myself. You can see he was struggling with cramp with the heat, but you can see he's so determined not to give his wickets away.
yep,
And I think that kind of just emphasises Ben Stokes. And I kind of feel that he's kind of showing real leadership at the moment. And actually, I kind of almost feel like at times he's a bit like almost with thinking about at the moment the darts is on obviously with Luke Littler, as in Luke Littler. It kind of seems like when he wants to win, he can win. And it almost feels like with Stokes, obviously you always want to score runs, but when kind of I suppose it's that pressure moment, you feel like he will not get himself out, and you're going to have to try so hard to get him out. He is so resilient, and I think he's played really well. And I saw kind of people saying, "Oh, we've lost 8 wickets now. Does Stokes need to push on?" And I think whilst Archer's there, at least he can kind of keep looking to kind of play in this way. And then obviously if Tongue comes in, he'll look to kind of release the shackles. But yeah, I think this has also shown to me why I think that he's such a good leader. And I think even if we end up, I suppose, Rob Key and McCullum moving on at the end of the series, I think you could do worse than keep Stokes as captain. I think he is a leader, and I think he's someone who inspires his teammates. So I think he's showing why he's a good leader now, and I think he should be a good leader for England going forward as well.
yeah, yeah. It was interesting today. I mean, the altercation with Jofra Archer was the first time I've seen any sign of discontent on the field itself,
Yeah,
and it wasn't a pretty sight, to be honest, because it was
no,
raised voices and considerable anger. Jofra
yeah,
was reluctant to actually return his high five when he took a wicket.
yeah,
So that'll take a little while. There'll be some sorting out to do around that.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, England have left themselves in a not nearly as bad a position as it looked like it might be.
yeah,
If, as you say, they can somehow claw their way to within 100 runs of
yeah,
Australia, keep Australia to 200 and have the prospect of chasing 300 on days 4 and 5. It's
yeah,
forecast to rain on Sunday morning, which may
yeah,
mean Australia saved by rain. It could be.
yeah, yeah. I think it's not all lost ring, like you say. I mean, obviously it's heavily in Australia's favour, but if, like you say, they could somehow get to a point where Australia do set them 350 to win, it will be a tough ask, but it's not impossible. And kind of with a kind of a 350, if one person can play a very impressive innings, then you're kind of halfway there.
Yep.
And so I think, and that's kind of like ultimately, obviously, like England haven't played brilliantly throughout the series, but if it gets to, I suppose, a fourth innings chase, sorry, you wouldn't be that surprised if Zach Crawley peeled off a 150. That's kind of just how it kind of seems to be with England. So
Yep.
yeah, there's definitely like it's not all is lost yet, and so that's kind of why I think like with all the kind of the calls for Stokes to be sacked as captain or whatever, or I think we need to wait until the series is done because ultimately, like you say, if England can somehow steal a victory, or even if there is some rain around, it ends in a draw. England could, I suppose, go, if we can go to the box and they test 2-1, then it's still alive, isn't it? And I know obviously that's very far away, but they've given themselves, I think, kind of even in all of the tests where they've kind of been behind the 8 ball, really, they've given themselves that outside chance. And obviously they couldn't capitalise upon that in Perth. But with Stokes in at the moment and archery, if I suppose they can get England to a decent position and then England perform well with the ball, you just never know. So there's a chance. It's a faint chance, but there is a chance.
Yeah, indeed there is. So the good news is that the weather will, a cool change come through tonight. It's only going to be 30 degrees tomorrow, 28 on Saturday, and then 24 on Sunday with the rain I mentioned.
Yeah.
Your highlight of the day, in your cricketing highlight of the day, what stands out for you?
Right, let me just have a think. Wow, highlights of the day. I mean, it's probably got to be Nathan Lyon going past Glenn McGrath. I think if you kind of think about, I suppose, the kind of career he's had, I suppose like kind of the stalwart he's been for Australia, and then even I suppose the kind of the jokey reaction of Glenn McGrath I thought was quite amusing in the commentary box. I thought that was kind of, and obviously that he'll obviously kind of appreciate how much work Lyon has put in to get to that point. So I think definitely, yeah. I think that it's got to be that, yeah. And also,
I was going to nominate Lyon for a different reason, and that was the delivery that bowled Duckett was absolute perler. I love seeing a spinner doing something like that. It's just magic to see.
Yep, definitely.
Now, normally I would ask you to nominate the Guerilla of the day, and you can by all means do so, but I'm going to nominate the Bear. Those who were with us early on today would have known that we had technology problems. The Bear is sick. He's got the flu. He's been in bed for several days, but notwithstanding that, he's waking up in the middle of the night to be on the end of the technology and set it up remotely from home. But today we had a major issue. We just had no sound coming out over YouTube. So the Bear actually got in his car. What time was it? Sort of 3 o'clock in the morning or something.
Probably earlier than that. I reckon it was before lunch, so maybe even like 1-ish, 1:30.
Yeah, something like that. Hopped in his car, came all the way down to the studio, fixed it up, and then buggered off back to bed. I reckon that's above and beyond myself. So the Bear is definitely the Guerilla of the day for mine.
Yep, I think I'd have to agree. Yeah, you can't really go past that. Yep, going beyond the Call of Duty, really. So yeah, definitely agreed with you on that one.
Okay, well, we shall be back with you from Adelaide tomorrow and the Roundup tomorrow evening. Thank you very much for joining me, William. It's been a fascinating day and most fun doing the Roundup with you. If you want to support us, please go to patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket and look at the options there. We do need as much support as we can get to cover the costs of running this operation. And thank you very much for being with us, William.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you tomorrow.
There's the bear in there, and Hendo as well. There are jingles they play, and swear words to yell.